I'ma be honest, I don't take this video lightly, as using protection is one of the more impactful lessons you can learn in life. I'll try to be a bit more polished here, not quite as rusty as I come out of my shell a bit, and poke at the full suite of options available within the world of Skyrim. Get ready to swiftly dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge as I rank and discuss every light armor from worst to best. This is once again based almost entirely on the visuals and aesthetics of the armors themselves instead of their protective power, and I will also once again be excluding any duplicates and clones from the list. I'm also focusing on the male armor versions, as some armors feature male and female variants, and this is more out of pure laziness than anything else on my part because we already have way too many armor sets to cover here. As always, if you find yourself enjoying the video, like and subscribe for more. Now, let's armor up. Number 34, Dark Seducer Armor. The only thing you'll be seducing in this one is the odd draugr, or if you're lucky, a lonely bird who's become extremely desperate. Not only is the Dark Seducer Armor the ugliest light armor, it might be the ugliest armor in the game, period. It just looks so insanely uncomfortable, not only for the wearer, but for pretty much everyone around them as well. It's like if someone took every cheesy retro fantasy armor trope and mashed it into a single fugly set. This is what a fantasy-based 80s hair metal band who exclusively plays power ballads about battling with the power of love would wear. I get that being ostentatious and over the top is kind of the point here, but jeez, this is rough. Both male and female armor variants of the set are terrible, with a strange mashup of Greek and fantasy designs that don't blend well at all, and a collar of sharpened bits that would gouge you at the slightest shift. The worst design aspect has to be the half-cuirass present on the male version. I guess Skyrim is cold enough that your nipples could become weapons themselves, but is that really something we needed to highlight in an armor set? The helmet is just a cherry on top, but honestly, looking at it, it probably could have been pretty sick if only it had some type of faceplate or guard. A sort of metallic beak or plate could have been really cool here, though one I would have worn with pretty much any other set than the one it belongs to. 0 out of 10 would not completely fail at seduction again. Number 33, Forsworn Armor. I swear, Forsworn gear just looks worse and worse every time I look at it. This is probably the tightest competition we've had so far for worst overall pick, because I honestly can't fully decide which set between this and Dark Seducer I like least. Where the Dark Seducer is just awkward and strange, the Forsworn Armor is just disgusting, with an absolutely wretched headpiece that is just abhorrently ugly to me. Wearing what I assume is a young elk bull's skin as a helmet could have been cool, as antlers on armor can be intimidating if done right, but things went oh so wrong here. The bones jutting out of and reinforcing the headpiece that are clearly stretching out the skin is one of the most repulsive looking effects within Skyrim, and then there's the smell.
Think of the smell. You haven't thought of the smell, you bitch!
The Forsworn Armor also suffers from a complete lack of fidelity, being one of the worst armor sets visually within the entire game to me, as you have these bird skulls and bones on the chest piece that aren't even objects, just a flat texture on the armor itself. It just looks terrible, and you know what, actually screw this is the worst. Dark Seducer, I apologize, it's really not even close, but I'm way too lazy to update my script, so here we are. The only redeeming factor in this entire disgusting mess are these skulls along the waistline, which are actual 3D rendered objects. Apparently that's the bar we are at for the Forsworn set, but look badass in their own right. Other than that, this set should never be worn by any self-respecting Dragonborn regardless of playthrough, and I've sworn it off completely. Number 32, Netch Leather Armor. This armor set is proof that nostalgia can only carry you so far because, yeah. Somehow intricately busy yet blandly boring, the Netch Leather Armor, despite its origins and reappearance from the legendary Morrowind, is absolutely one of the worst looking light armor sets in Skyrim to me. I can appreciate the little details and care taken to recreate a set last seen when textures looked like this, with small pieces of bone and smaller straps holding this entire rough mess together, but Netch, please, this thing is just plain ugly. In its defense, it's not really intended to be an elegant masterclass in armor making, but instead the durable and resourceful design of a people who regularly deal with blighted ashfalls and volcanic eruptions. I will say it's very detailed, featuring some impressive looking stitching between the leather parts and the nice touch of having the earpieces larger to accommodate the elven ears that would normally be wearing the cap. The Netch Leather Armor features a few variants like shadowed and painted that do change up a few things, but for the most part it all remains as unappealing as the next, though I have to give it some props for being fairly unique. The boiled Netch Leather helmet is particularly intriguing with these dopey sort of ear or horn flaps, and the goggles to help deal with the ashen wastelands that make up the Dunmurry homelands. All that being said, uniqueness only carries it so far, and to be honest, it's an armor set I've probably only ever worn for the purposes of this video because it's just that off-putting to me. Stop trying to make Netch happen. It's not going to happen. Number 31, hide armor. I can't hide my feelings on this one. The hide armor really doesn't do much for me, unfortunately. I can appreciate its addition as it serves a useful function in being a bandit's go-to gear, but for me, outside of one Orc Berserker playthrough, I'd honestly say I've never used this armor set without immediately replacing it with anything better, which isn't always the case for me, even if a new armor is an upgrade. I am a slave to fashion, if nothing else. Hide fits for a barbarian playthrough, and that's about it, as it is light armor and it means it, as you rely more on your rippling muscles to protect you instead of any meaningful protective armor. Unless you're stabbed directly in the sternum, you're probably going to be wounded pretty heavily with any type of strike in the hide armor. The helmet isn't terrible, and it's really the only redeeming factor for the armor in general, as I find it too basic and boring to rank any higher on the list. The helmet does slightly give me Maximus and Gladiator vibes, so that's a point in its favor as well. I should say this early, I'm not great at historical accuracy when it comes to most designs, but I still can't imagine anyone rolled into battle with a few leather straps across their chest and called it a day. Even flavor-wise, role-playing as a Conan-esque barbarian, I much prefer the fur armor as it's more fitting and thematic than hide. This stays hidden at the bottom of the list. Number 30, Ancient Shrouded Armor. Speaking of hiding, that's all I wanted to do after following the Dark Brotherhood questline and receiving the Ancient Shrouded Armor because, yeah, when I'm rolling out in some powerful armor, I don't exactly love feeling like someone's barely disguised fetish. Despite its incredibly useful and powerful traits, other than the chest piece with its poison resistance, the Ancient Shrouded set is a gimp suit. There's just no way around it, it's a gimp suit. I understand the intent here, as an assassin needs to be sleek and silent as possible, so you can't exactly have bulky armor plates or loose-fitting rattling parts to your gear, but the sheer slimness and skin-tight nature of the suit is ridiculous on its own, and even more ridiculous within the world of Skyrim. It just looks so out of place and clashes with the vanilla designs in multiple ways. And for some reason the studs in various points look really low-res and silly. Really, the only person who should be wearing it is Astrid because okay, yeah, that's totally fine. But on my character, it's more fitting for entering a sex dungeon than a normal Draugr-filled one, though if you have a Draugr-filled sex dungeon, well, now you have my interest. I love the unique enchantments and effects and the intent behind the armor. I just find its execution almost embarrassing. I think more armor padding or maybe a longer cloak or blades at least strapped to the armor, just something, might have helped the design out here, but as it stands, the Ancient Shrouded Armor should remain just that, shrouded and hidden away in your character's personal, private time-only stash. Number 29, Studded Armor. You won't be quite a stud in this set, as the studded armor is also one of my least favorite in the game. It's essentially the hide armor with, to be fair, a decent looking leather undershirt to potentially stop one or two fatal blows at best. It features more armoring with the bracers and shin guards at least, and heavier studs along the armor skirt. To me, it's basically just a worse version of number 28, Scaled Armor. Scaling things back a bit, we have the Scaled Armor, which is again basically just the hide armor with some added flourishes and, you know, actual armor. I do dig the Scaled Armor though. I find it just becomes so generic through your journey in Skyrim that I don't see ranking it higher than this on the list. The leather scaling of the chest piece is actually really great looking, and the larger metallic plate does reinforce some pretty vital organ areas. The wrist guards have actual metal on them, and the longer, heavily studded armor skirt looks pretty effective, so it's really not a bad design at all, just not a set I personally ever use within the game, again due to just how weak and generic it is compared to others. Quickly and easily replaced on your travels and questing. I will say I don't care for the helmet here as much. While it's basically the hide helmet, it features these, what I assume are young goat horns, protruding on the top. But I personally find horns on helmets tolerable at best and just plain dumb looking at worst. Here we land somewhere in the middle of that with a From the neck down, it looks passable though, which is something I personally relate to. Number 27, Scaled Horn Armor. Speaking of horns, we have the slightly hornier version of the Scaled Armor with the cleverly named Scaled Horn Armor. They really stretched for that one. This is essentially the same armor with what I believe is a goat carcass strapped to the shoulder and running down the back. The fur of the animal turns into this strange amorphous blob, probably due to just how low res the vanilla set textures could be. But the horn on the shoulder does add a little something here for me, though again, not an armor set I've really used for any meaningful amount of time. 4 out of 10 would not horn out again. Number 26, Fur Armor. For sure, you knew this was coming up soon. While the fur armor features even less actual armoring than the hide armor, with one of its variants literally just being a loincloth, I can't help but kinda love it in its own way. It's just so iconic to me and honestly fitting for some very specific character builds, whether it's a more primitive type of hunter or trapper in the wilds, or a survivalist in the harsh blizzards and snowy peaks, or a full-on barbarian. The fur armor, while it becomes almost overbearingly common through your journey, is one I can appreciate for what it is. Its general design just fits really well within the world of Skyrim, and it looks more than capable of protecting you against the elements, if nothing else. So if I'm such a furry for this armor set, why is it so near the bottom? Well, it's about as basic as you can get, though I will will say charging dragons with my orc barbarian in nothing but a loincloth was always amazing. But where first stumbles completely for me is the hat. This dead cat wrapped with some string that flops onto your character's head just has to be one of the most straight up ugliest headpieces within the entire game. I'm not even sure what it's supposed to be, as they could have gone with a more mountain man like fox or wolf hat here. Instead we get this disgusting looking piece of ass with these strange braids of fur dangling along the sides. While I probably can't reasonably rank fur much higher on the list, the helmet alone brings it down quite a bit. Number 25, amber armor. This may be a hot take, but the neon Crayola knight is ready and waiting. Nothing hits or misses harder than amber designs, and we have a big old miss. The amber armor has always been one of the more fantastical and just strange materials and designs throughout Oblivion and Skyrim. And I find most armors ripped directly from Oblivion are very out of place in the broader style and aesthetic of Skyrim. However, for a material like amber, that can work in its favor, as it's almost otherworldly in its uniqueness. So I do give it some points for its place in the world, even if it does look like this, because definitely far from my favorite armor set within the game. The color of the amber itself looks great in small flourishes or additions, but when it's fully stacked onto a full set of armor, it just completely overwhelms it visually, as it gives your character this silly orange radiance that looks part bug, part orange crayon. Discs and plates of amber notwithstanding, I do like the more curved flowing designs present through the entire armor set, giving a very distinctive appearance even if it's a little embarrassing. The helm absolutely could have used some type of face or cheek guard, because I think it looks extremely goofy with this awkward open face style. I get what they were going for, and it's really hard to judge these designs in Skyrim on their own merits because they're essentially lifted directly from Oblivion, but less is more here, as smaller pieces of amber reinforcing a more traditional armor set could have been sick as hell, and I think you can look to the boots for an example of that. Amber just ain't it. Number 24, Stormcloak Officer Armor. Now bear with me here, but the Stormcloak Officer Armor firmly goes into my meh category. Why, you may ask? Well, just because. That was terrible. I can't not associate the Stormcloak Officer Armor with one of my least favorite characters within the entire game. I'm not sure why Galmar Stonefist specifically annoys me so much. Maybe because he's just a prick to you for the most part, no matter what you do, despite single-handedly decimating Imperial forts while he sits on his ass in Windhelm. But regardless, it does impact my overall feelings of this light armor set. In theory, I like it, a more primal or primitive set that invokes traditional Skyrim or Nordic influences, with bones and animal parts worked in reminiscent of Forsworn armor, who are basically just fully embracive, which, as of the script writing I learned is an actual word, of the more traditional Orthodox Nordic gear, which is fitting given the intent and goals behind the Stormcloak Rebellion in general. I really dig the greaves and gauntlets. I think the dark plates adorned with wicked spikes do look really cool. However, despite the warm looking bearskin, there's nothing about the chest or body I really like about this particular set. It's just too rugged and thrown together and doesn't come across as a cohesive armor set, but instead a slapdash of different pieces of gear with an animal carcass thrown on top for good measure. To me, it's barely a full set. Number 23, Guard Armor. This armor is just so memed on and iconic to Skyrim that this is probably the first time I've ever even actually looked at it with a critical eye, and overall it's not bad. I can honestly say in all my years playing Skyrim, I don't think I've ever even equipped this armor set once, as I just don't even really consider it to be an actual piece of gear within the game, so history is made with this video. Regardless, it's not bad. It does feature some leather scaling for the chest piece, with what I'm now realizing in reviewing these, a rare chainmail shirt. But inexplicably, the sleeves of the shirt have been either cut off or were unfinished, and I guess the guards didn't want to rob others of the free gun shows as they walked around. The helmet is just goofy, and despite trying to look at it critically, I can't get past just how many memes I've seen using this exact same helmet, so I'm not even gonna try. Though I do think the fact that it completely obscures anything about your character is funny. One notable fact with the guard armor is that it has unique livery for each hold, with the most iconic having to be Whiterun's gold, and my favorite probably being the dark Markarth green. The city is awful, but the guards in Markarth do have some nice drip with this dark green that pleasantly fits into the world of Skyrim at large. The vanilla guard armor really just shows the age of Skyrim, with the leather straps being just part of the texture of the tabard instead of actual rendered objects, so that's just a funny note. Number 22, Dwarven Mail. Another Creation Club edition. This one lets you get your dwarf on in a lighter way, as Dwarven armor in the base game is, as you can imagine, very heavy armor. There's a few of these variants that basically let you utilize the aesthetic of a heavy armor set with a light armor character to what I would say are varying degrees of believability and success. The Dwarven Mail unfortunately falls slightly on the lower end of that, with not really believably changing the appearance of the armor enough to make it look like light armor, to me at least. I think the added purple sort of cape is a nice touch, and I can appreciate the detail in the interlocking individual scales of armor that make up most of this set. It gives a very Byzantine armor set appearance to me, which is maybe what it's going for. I wouldn't be fully sure, but that's the vibe I get. Where the dwarven male falls short is with its boots. These boots are made for stomping because we got the Mega Man effect going on here. I can appreciate all the great details on the armor, but these massive, way too large boots weigh the entire set down for me. They look like your character won't even be able to lift them, let alone run, but the Dragonborn apparently never skips leg day, which I guess explains all the mountain jumping and climbing skills. Overall, it's actually not a bad looking set, just not what I personally want from a light armor archetype, but it's still cool to have it as an option. Number 21, leather armor. Whether or not you agree with me, you can't deny how iconic this armor set is, but despite that, it still has too many issues to really rank higher than the remaining armors on the list for me. The leather armor set is sort of the quintessential light armor wearing gear in the early game. It is what it is, an armor set that looks light, flexible, yet still effective in blocking some blows while giving the wearer enough agility to stay mobile and fast. Where leather falters for me a bit is the helm is just sort of ugly. I think there's some really fascinating and badass looking historical leather helmets that could have been referenced, like a more Viking style helm, but it's instead this almost Norman style helmet with more side and ear protection than anything else. Another weak area is just the general over-designed nature of the armor, with straps and studs and layers and more straps and belts. It looks like a nightmare to try and keep clean or even equip, and I think some simplicity would have helped it here, especially considering it's one of the lowest level and common armor sets you will find in your journeys through Skyrim. I do think the left pauldron having a raised ridge of metal is a nice touch, as that would generally be the side most likely to be struck by an enemy, with it being your shield arm, so a nice little detail there. Overall, despite how iconic the leather armor set is for Skyrim, I'm still gonna leave it hung out to dry. Number 20, Orcish Scaled Armor. Much like the Dwarven Male set, the Orcish Scaled Armor is basically an excuse to have an Orcish Light Armor set, and in this case, I think it's executed much better, probably because I'm just biased towards Orcish gear anyways. The Orcish Scaled Armor is pretty awesome, though it still falls on the heavier looking side of things, especially once again with its overweight boots. The helmet stands out to me. Having the plume and overlapping plates of orichalcum gives it an extremely badass appearance. The scaled plates that make up the undershirt of the armor on the chest are a nice touch, and while I can appreciate a lot of the design here, I don't think it's quite as clean or intimidating in appearance as the standard heavy Orcish armor is. I'm also really not a fan of this random leather bib that's just strapped around the neck area. I get it was probably intended to break up the design and give it a more natural appearance to look a little bit lighter, but it's just a little too random for my taste, and would have preferred maybe some black tufts of fur as seen on Orcish weapons. Overall, while I do love my Orcish gear, this isn't nearly my favorite in the lineup, but I can still appreciate the option of getting my orc on in a lighter way. Number 19, Elven Hunter. I had to hunt this one down, but apparently this is a light armor set in Skyrim. I legitimately had never even seen this one until the making of this video, so I guess it's a thing. The Elven Hunter set is basically a regular Elven set with pieces that were potentially lost or damaged and replaced or reinforced with scrapped together fabric and leather. It's a cool idea, this more rugged survivalist take on one of the more fancy and elegant armor sets within the entire game, and I think it's executed fairly well. While I obviously don't like it as much as regular Elven gear, I can appreciate the little details present here, like the bedroll on the back or increased pouches for survival in the wilds of Skyrim. I could see wearing this set for a hunter or ranged character as it features elven pieces yet still looks lighter and more mobile, so I have to give this a solid B. Number 18, Studded Dragon Scale. I'm gonna try not to stutter here, but while it's not my favorite of the scale sets, I'll be honest, this is probably the most measured and reasonable of the designs among that particular material type. Instead of massive plates and chunks of bone making up the majority of the armor, instead we have a more realistic approach with dragon bone parts reinforcing a much more realistic studded leather cuirass, gambeson, and greaves. Added through the Creation Club, it's really cool to see an alternative option for dragon scale armor that doesn't try to overdo it one way or the other. The dragon bits that make up the more heavily armored areas of the set are very well implemented, and I have to say this one looks extremely intimidating and plausible despite how fantastical it is overall. I also once again have to appreciate the asymmetrical pauldrons, something I'm always a sucker for, as the left features a more protected and dangerous series of spikes. The helmet is essentially the dragon scale version with different coloring, but it's not my favorite helmet design and brings this armor set down just a bit for me. An added nose guard or mask would have helped a lot here and make it just a little more interesting to me and more secure on the character's head. As it stands now, it looks like it's just kind of precariously sitting on the head, not really secured in any way. Overall, Studded Dragon Scale is a great twist on a classic armor set. Number 17, Chitin Armor. Oh, you've got to be chitting me. Okay, I know that's not how you pronounce chitin, but it was worth it for the pun. I'll be the first to admit this armor set is not nearly closest to the prettiest or most elegant, but I do love it for its uniqueness. The crab man cometh and he is angry.
We're crab people now.
We're crab
crab people now?
Yes.
You want us to become crab people?
The chitin armor set does bring some nostalgia from Morrowind, though it's completely different in its appearance from that game, and it's essentially a different armor type completely. But even still, I kinda love it in its own sort of gross way. The helmet is my favorite part, with a full mask and goggles to deal with the ash of Morrowind. I love the form-fitting protective shell of chitin that makes up the helmet itself, and the layered chitin armoring the left pauldron looks really awesome. Everything beyond that does falter a bit, with the chitin plating awkwardly just sort of only covering half the chest, leaving the heart and lungs, somewhat vital spots I guess, seemingly completely unprotected, and the right shoulder really could have used a pauldron as well. The gloves are also a bit bulky for light armor, but I think the material in general looks great, and it's not completely devoid of color, featuring red cloth, though overall it is extremely brown. Really, not too many things bug me about this armor set. Number 16, Vampire Armor. Despite the name, this armor definitely does not suck. The Vampire Armor, while maybe a bit plain, features a nice, sleek elegance not found in many other armor sets within Skyrim, looking much more like robes than really anything else available for those still wanting armor. While the vampires of Skyrim may not fully have the elegance and grace of vampires in other media, it's still there to an extent, and the small detail of ruffled cuffs poking out from the wrist guards is a nice hint to the vampiric sophistication. I think generally the armor has a nice streamlined silhouette and looks perfectly suitable for stalking through the streets at night, searching for your next meal. Number 15, Ancient Falmer Armor. Oh, that's kind of hard to say. Falmer Armor. Say that 5 times fast. Finally, the Falmer have a slight win in my rankings, as they, for maybe the first time, avoid being the bottom of the list. We just had to go back a few thousand years in their history to get there. The Ancient Falmer Armor's This armor is incredibly unique, and from a lore perspective, really awesome to see. These fallen snow elves, once a mighty and majestic people, are now just blind, primitive residues of a much greater civilization, and we get a taste of that with this set. This Creation Club edition lets us see what the snow elves may have looked like in their prime and glory days, and it's pretty badass, invoking a much more Tolkien-esque elven appearance than the other Mer within the Elder Scrolls. This armor is really sick for the most part, and I do enjoy the elegance of its curved lines and more fanciful flourishes. The adornments on the chest and greaves are really well designed and just well detailed and done. And if you're going for an extremely stylish and graceful type of fighter, this is probably one of the better armor sets in the game to realize that fantasy. Where it really stumbles though is the Ancient Falmer crown, a headpiece that looks half finished. It's not terrible, and it once again invokes classic elven aesthetics found in fantasy, but it also awkwardly doesn't feature anything to secure it or even any further protection of the wearer's skull, instead just being this kind of crown that somehow rests only on your face. It's just awkward is the word I would use. A cooler helm would have put this a few spots higher, but even still, not a bad looking set. Number 14, Daedric Mail. Much like Dwarven Mail and Orcish scaled armor, this armor set is a Creation Club edition that basically just lets you roll around in Daedric armor while enjoying the benefits of light armor perks. While it lacks a helmet, and I really haven't personally used this set very often, I don't think it's a bad one at all. Much like full Daedric armor, it's extremely menacing and otherworldly, invoking a much more demonic type of character and build, and is a perfect complement to any evil aligned or really any type of character that wants to look like an edgy badass. While I love the blood red scale armor that makes up the underlayer, the Daedric Mail has the same issue Dwarven does for me, in that it just looks way too bulky and heavy for light armor. I also just can't see it and not think of that one evil armor set from Fable. Like seriously, it's essentially the same exact armor set, even down to the asymmetrical spiked pauldron. I can appreciate Daedric Mail for what it is, a lighter, tweaked version of the heavy standard, but I don't think it hits the highs as that one, while still looking too large and imposing for a truly lightly armored character. Not a bad set, just not my personal favorite, and if you disagree, well, then off to oblivion with you. Number 13, Stalrim Light Armor. This one is really tough, as I equally love the Stalrim Light Armor and hate it in some ways as well. Stalrim remains one of my favorite materials appearance-wise within Skyrim, as I find the enchanted ice effect extremely cool. But seriously, I think the texture and lighting always looks great, and it fits so well with the aesthetic and vibe of Skyrim. And the armor is no exception here, as I think the Stalrim on it looks fantastic. Unlike Amber, there's not too much of it here either, as I find it hits almost the right ratio of fur and leather to Stalrim present on the set. I can't say I absolutely love the shape or how it's integrated into the armor pieces though, especially concerning the chest piece. It's almost too angular and blocky, and given the unique and bright appearance of Stalrim, it gives the armor overall this almost mechanical or power armor-like look to me. The fur is a nice touch though, especially the raised collar, and the highlight for me is probably the pauldrons. I just think they look absolutely perfectly executed. The helmet is just okay. It also features a traditional Nordic type of design, but I don't think the horns did it any favors on this one. I'm picturing it without the horns and maybe a mask, and in my head it looks really, really awesome. Basically, just let me be Sub-Zero in this armor set. Regardless, it's a great one. 8 out of 10 would chill in this armor again. Number 12, Dragon Scale Armor. Now let's scale back a bit and discuss what are in my mind the best looking light armors in the game, starting with the Dragon Scale Armor. This is just a great set that I think executes the idea of armor crafted from the remains of dragons much more effectively than the Dragon Plate heavy version. While I can't say Dragon Scale looks very light, really not light at all, and is part of the reason I don't have it higher on the list, it's extremely detailed and well-designed armor that I still enjoy running around in within Skyrim. The overlapping plates of dragon scale and bone, bolted and reinforced with these metallic ridges laid over dragon skin, just looks awesome, and I think in general this entire set comes together in a very visually appealing way. The spikes adorning the pauldrons and backs of the arms look intimidating as hell and give the set a very menacing silhouette, not really found that often with the light armors specifically. The helmet, as I said earlier, is essentially the same as the studied variant of the set, and my same complaints are still dragon on there. There's not too many things as badass as rolling into battle wearing the remains of dragons you've slain yourself, and the dragon scale armor lets you live this fantasy to its fullest, while looking absolutely fabulous while doing so. Number 11, Thieves Guild Armor. Let this armor steal your heart, as the Thieves Guild armor is one of the most iconic and fitting light armor sets in the game for me. Not my complete favorite, obviously, but in realizing the fantasy of a thief and their role and place within Skyrim, I find the armor set completely grounds your character and helps you realize that archetype in a really pleasing way. The sleek leather armor with multiple pouches and belts for nefarious tools just contributes so much to the fantasy of slinking through the streets at night, lockpicking your way into homes, and taking whatever you want with no trace. I appreciate how sort of rugged and worn down it looks too, as it clearly comes from a veteran thief, one who's narrowly avoided many scrapes and scraps yet continues on without being caught. I'm a big fan of hoods in general too, and for some reason especially on Argonians in Skyrim, and my Argonian thief never really took this or the next set off no matter how far into the game I progressed. However, as much as I love the standard Thieves Guild armor, I still prefer number 10, Guild Master Armor. You know what they say, once you go black, you really like it because it looks cool. The guild armor set is a wonderful reward for the end of the Thieves Guild quest, as you receive this improved, unique, and badass version of their armor for your efforts. Pretty much everything I said for the Thieves Guild armor carries into this one, with the added bonus of looking even more intimidating and fitting at night. Creeping and sneaking with this armor doesn't really get old, and it deserves a spot in the top 10 of my list. Number 9, Vampire Royal Armor. If you want to be a bit more regal, however, the Vampire Royal Armor has you covered. Literally. Pretty much a straight upgrade from the basic vampire armor, the royal version is absolutely awesome and one of my favorite light armor sets within the entire game. It's really hard not to just feel completely superior to your enemies as you charge into battle with this armor set, and it complements the vampiric vibe and playstyle so well that it's essentially a requirement for me to pick up and wear as a vampire going through the Dawnguard DLC. The blood red fine shirt, the layered, finely crafted leather of the chest piece, the slightly heavier armored pauldrons and shoulders, it looks both majestic and realistic as an actual armor piece for protection, while maintaining plenty of style for your sophisticated vampiric schemes. The popped collar and cape is another nice touch that invokes classic vampiric iconography, though I find the cape maybe a touch too short and sadly lacks any type of realistic physics, which is expected for an almost 14-year-old game. Much like Skyrim itself, the Vampire Royal armor may be dated, but it's also ever-living and eternal, always coming back just when you thought it was finally dead. Number 8, Elven Armor. Elegant, graceful, yet badass, the Elven Armor is the opposite of its usual wearers, the ever-dickish Thalmor. While it's hard to separate the Elven Armor from the disgustingly arrogant High Elves who almost exclusively wear it throughout the world of Skyrim, I urge you to try, because on its own, it's one of the best looking light armor sets within the entire game, and is also kind of the most definitive one for me too. When I picture light armor or plan a light armor wearing character, I usually picture them wearing the Elven Armor at some point in the playthrough, and yeah, that's usually the case, even if it's just the gloves or chest piece for a bit. The golden hue of the metal with the intricate and detailed winged or feathered eagle motif present on pretty much all Elven gear just looks absolutely amazing on the armor in particular, and I think it realizes the fantasy of a more advanced, regal yet arrogant group of racists, High Elves. My only slight gripe with the armor is that it's very tailored towards the High Elves aesthetically, and on other characters can look a little goofy or immersion breaking, like an Argonian for example. If you're going for a refined duelist or spellsword, the Elven Armor is in a league of its own though, and only really gets better with number 7, Elven Gilded Armor. With some tweaks, the Elven Gilded Armor adds a bit more armor and gild, to what was already an intricately detailed armor set, and overall I think it just looks slightly better than the baseline armor. I think the expanded and more flared pauldrons do a lot to make the silhouette slightly more imposing and better scaled, as the default Elven pauldrons can be a little too smooth and rounded compared to these. Overall, both sets set a high elf bar. Number 6, Dawnguard Armor. Okay, let's get this out of the way first with the Dawnguard light armor. The helmet just has to go. It's just not it, especially when compared to the vastly superior and badass heavy armor helmet for the Dawnguard. So we just sort of have to move on and ignore that going forward. Yes, I'm saying this armor is a bit of a butterface. The rest of the armor set though is just fantastic and exactly what I want in a light armor set. Simple, sleek, streamlined, but still protective, the chest piece with its small details, while relatively simple and utilitarian compared to other light armor sets, gets the job done with no fuss and no frills. It's a perfect armor set for a very stoic faction of vampire hunters, even featuring an almost turtleneck-like leather-wrapped piece to protect the wearer's sweet, tasty blood from any hungry vampires. Just a fantastic little detail to me. My favorite variant of this is the one that features a single steel pauldron with leather straps across the chest. It just looks so much like what a monster hunter would wear, and there's something about how this entire set comes together that is completely cohesive, realistic, yet badass. A perfect armor set for an agile warrior, this is definitely one of my personal go-tos. Number 5, leather scout armor. But if we really want an almost flawless light armor set that embraces what a light, agile warrior could be mobile within, the leather scout armor just hits every mark for me and is pretty much the quintessential wilderness ranger set. This is by far one of my favorite archer sets, and much like the Dawnguard armor, I think its relative simplicity and grounded appearance adds a lot to it. It has this rugged, enduring quality that blends seamlessly into the world of Skyrim and lets you realize the fantasy of being a true adventurer. At least that's why I like it. Don't get me wrong, it's really simple, and the more outlandish and fantastical armors can be awesome, and we'll see a few more remaining on this list, but there's a lot to be said for a badass yet feasible, sensible, and realistic approach to what a journeying adventurer would wear. The blue hood is a standout feature, though calling it a helmet is a pretty big stretch as it's clearly just a hood, but I like the layered leathers on the rest of the set with various clasps and buckles holding it all together. The dark gray of the weathered and rugged pants also adds some nice contrast, and overall, I think this set from its colors and stylistic choices just comes together so well that I can't help but just scout it out from afar. That was awful. I'm so sorry. That was just terrible. Number 4, Reforged Divine Crusader Armor. While simplicity is great, Deus vaulting your way across Skyrim is even better. While I think the Reforged Crusader set is a bit weaker in its overall design compared to the heavy armor version, it's nevertheless one of the most flavorful and badass armor sets within the entire game. This Creation Club edition is the perfect light armored paladin set, giving its bonuses to illusion, restoration, disease, and undead resistances. Rolling around as a divine knight of the Nine who delves into dungeons to heroically slay Draugr and cleanse the land of evil is a very tempting type of playthrough, and this armor really helps you realize that peak fantasy. The fur-topped cuirass looks great and practical given the frosty environments of Skyrim, and the stark white tabard contrasts nicely with the darker metals. The gauntlets are a little plain and strangely low res, but in first person they look just okay. The helm is obviously very unique, and the wings flowing from the cheek guards are pretty iconic to this set in particular. As we've seen, chainmail is strangely rare for the light armors and is always a welcome addition, and outside of a few heavier plates makes up the bulk of this armor's protection. The set stands out, but also still fits well within the world of Skyrim, and I believe was one of the very first Creation Club additions, or possibly even just mods in general to the game itself. At least I remember seeing this thing years ago, shortly after release of the game. It's a fantastic set, so embrace your divine nature and start your crusade. Number 3, Glass Armor. After spending so much time praising armor sets for their grounded appearance, ranking the completely fantastical glass armor this high may make it sound like I'm speaking out of my glass, and well, yeah, I am. I get the complaints about this ridiculously over-designed, heavy-looking Power Ranger Villain of the Week-esque armor, but I just can't help but love it anyways. There's something about the glass armor that's just so over the top and intricate, and I just admire how hard they went when modeling this armor. I mentioned it before, glass has always been one of my favorite materials / weapon / armor types within the Elder Scrolls series because it's just so unique and alien to how we understand materials and smithing in the real world. And that's what I always appreciated about the series. You have extremely grounded leather, iron, and steel worked gear that tries to make the world feel alive and realistic and grounded, but then things like glass and Stalrim and Daedric pieces throw any rules or conceptions about reality out the window in favor of full imagination. And the glass armor set capitalizes on all of that for me. While it does tailor itself to a very specific type of light armor character, I still think it just looks incredibly cool, with these burnished golden plates of metal intricately designed and reinforcing the few pieces of shimmering glass. This type of ratio is more what I wish the Amber set had gone for, as I think it adds to the mystery and rarity of the nameline material itself. The armor looks looks as futuristic and as advanced as it is, like no mere mortal could just put it on and realize its full potential. It's incredibly cool and iconic. The glass set shatters any preconceived notions of what light armor should be. Number 2, Remnant Armor Set. When we get an Elder Scrolls 6 and I'm playing it on the day of release in the retirement home, I still pray it's based in Hammerfell because damn, this Remnant Armor, a Creation Club edition with the Redguard Armaments pack, is one of my absolute favorite sets within the entire game, as I find it equal parts badass and intriguing. I can't help but wonder as to the origins of this armor and where it's traveled to end up with my character. I know it's just another armor set of course, but the rugged appearance of the cloth with its ragged holes and frayed hems speak to the journeys this armor has been on, and I think adds a lot of mystery to the set for me. The golden scaled pieces look beautiful and effective, and it adds a lot of gravitas and authority to your character as you run around in Skyrim with it. While I praised other sets for their seamless integration into the world, this one is unique in that it truly makes you look like an outlander from another land, a mysterious warrior who can single-handedly tackle any problem thrown their way because, well, as the Dragonborn you just can. I love the helmet and hood combo, which gives it the most unique appearance within the game, as your character's eyes mysteriously shine from the darkened hood. And the purple of the mask and sash adds a nice splash of color to the armor set overall. This one also has a very Byzantine medieval armor appearance, which I just find fascinating. Even the large belt buckle on the center is intricately engraved and nice to look at. The pouches and added flask on the hip make this my favorite light armor spellsword set in the game, as it combines so many unique elements together to realize the fantasy of being the traveling warrior mage, who gets by on their arcane power, knowledge, and skill with a blade in equal parts. Just an absolutely amazing looking armor set. Number 1, Nightingale Armor. It's a stark transition. We go from the exotic, golden, and colorful Remnant set to the dark, sinister, and captivating Nightingale Armor. This is by far my favorite light armor set within the entire game, and yes, it's because I enjoy getting my Batman on within Skyrim. The Nightingale set is one of the most badass vanilla armor sets, and the quest line to receive it, and subsequent quests to reform the Nightingales, is an incredibly cool and flavorful one. Ironically, this is just to me a completely vastly superior assassin getup than the Dark Brotherhood's gimp suit. It manages to look sleek, silent, and menacing as hell. The hood, mask, and cloak are the standouts for me, completely shrouding your character in dark mystery as the ultimate stalker and stealth archer. I love the added touch of the gloves being fingerless, allowing for dexterous lockpicking, bowstring pulling, or delicate thieving in the dead of night. Someone wearing this armor just can't be up to any good, and I think the fact that you aren't arrested on sight when strolling into town wearing this set just speaks to the integrity of Skyrim's guards and their lack of profiling, despite their explicit racism at other times. The overlapping black leathers create an extremely intriguing profile, and you just look like an absolute badass. I really don't know how else to express it. Stealthy playthroughs are some of my favorite within Skyrim, and this is the ultimate set to wear when sneakily sticking arrows and blades where they shouldn't be. Say what you will about Nocturnal, but for being the mistress of night, darkness, and mystery, she clearly knows how to give her followers an incredible fit. Whew, and there we have it. Pretty much every light armor in Skyrim subjectively ranked. Let me know your favorite or least favorites in the comments, or what I might have missed. Again, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe for more as we get heavy metal in the next one. That's it for me. Until next time.